week to review everything.
He's
Maybe she
bumbling
didn't
over there
say
making
that.
some Heard was a cuss word. All right.
So I don't know if you heard all that.
Yeah, heard some.
Shouldn't have had that chocolate. It makes me thirsty.
All right, welcome everybody to the regular stated meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. This is the meeting for Thursday, May 16th, 2024. This is to formally advise that as required by General Law, Chapter 38, Sections 18 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to ending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on June 16, 2021, as extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. The Yarmouth Conservation Commission will hold a public meeting at the date and time noted above. The public is welcome to attend either in person or via the alternative public access provided on the notice of meeting available on the Town of Yarmouth website. Our first order of business is an enforcement matter. Let's see, Dayton and Matt Grew 317 Weir Road. This is an unpermitted vegetation removal regarding regrading and structures within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and pond restoration plan review.
Good evening, Lynn Hamlin, and I'm here with Matt Group, the property owner. This came to me as a request to prepare a restoration plan for an enforcement order. I went out with the surveyor and we delineated the edge of the wetland using both plant identification and soil borings, which you can see better on the site plan than you can on the restoration plan because I covered up the line with plants. Some of the clearing was done in the wetland, so when I did the restoration plan, I concentrated the wetland species for the topography on the cleared area. So obviously the more wetland type species were done lower and closer to the water, and as we moved further to the house, then we could use species that were more facultative. There were 7 trees removed, I believe, was what I was told. We put 11 back. All the plants are native. What I strive to do is create diversity and good wildlife habitat. I try to make it pleasant for the property owner so people are less apt to want to cut it down. It's always been my strategy. And I think you had a chance to look at it, and maybe I'll just try to answer questions if you have them.
All right, sorry.
That's fine.
Brittany, any comments, questions?
The only comment I had is that there are 2 of them on there that are, I don't think, native to Cape Cod, the concolor fir and the fringe tree. I think we would prefer something from the cooperative extension list or something more native to the Northeast. I think those are a bit too far from the Cape. They're not really native here, if you wouldn't mind switching those 2, but other than that, it looks like a great plan.
Okay, I mean, they are natives, maybe not Cape Cod. I know Bill Clark is a big fan of the concolor fir.
I mean, do you guys see concolor fir, fringe trees around in Yarmouth?
I don't know about them myself.
The concolor fir is,
So willing to take a little bit of, if Bill Clark is,
All right. It's not up to me. It's the board.
we're not doing, it's not like we're doing a forest of them, so I guess I can live with that, but
also to make you feel better, those trees are beyond the 50-foot buffer, so what I did was more strict natives closer in the 35-foot buffer zone. There's a little access way through there, so when I got beyond 50 feet, then...
Got a little creative.
But I like diversity, and...
well, what's the native conspecific of that? Or what would be the native equivalent?
It is native, but spruce. But the spruce is so riddled with problems. They get bugs, they die. They're really hard to stay healthy. And Bill Clark, if you ever took a course of his in his Cape Cod Community College programs, he always pounded the table, use concolor fir. They're healthy. They provide the same kind of habitat. It provides, I was trying to mix up deciduous and evergreen. I think it's a great tree plant choice.
Can I just ask a question about them? I've never heard of that kind of fir. Right, you know, that doesn't mean much. I mean, there are probably a lot of fir that I haven't heard of. You don't have a picture of one or anything, do you?
pull it up on my phone.
Well, I don't know if I could see that. And also, you said it's native, is it native, are you saying to Massachusetts or something? I mean, it's not native to
New
the
England.
New England? Okay.
It's okay to have, I mean, I'm not going to
I
argue
know,
with
I-
you about the baby with the bathwater. It's a great tree, and
And the height of the tree, the mature height of the tree is what?
they're big trees.
The big tree? Okay, so you couldn't substitute like a white pine or something?
You could. White pines also have problems.
Well-
In Nickerson State Forest, they took out all the white pine because they also got bugs. The concolor fir is a tree that's hardy. It's an evergreen tree. It provides the same basic habitat requirements. And it's, I try to put things in that are going to live and be successful.
Yeah, I just am not familiar with the tree, so if there was an objection on the part of Brittany, I might not have a tendency to approve, to vote for it, unless I knew something more about the tree and why another tree couldn't be substituted, that's all.
Well, Ed,
Yeah.
bottom line, Cape Cod is not like the rest of Massachusetts. It's a pine barrens type environment originally. And so you put a tree from New England, it's not going to match the kind of local flora, the insects and so forth that you want to get on the Cape. And I can see your rationale, so I'd go along with that rationale, but I understood that we should not be allowing that kind of stuff unless you have a good reason, which sounds like you do.
And also, it's beyond the 50-foot buffer where you would allow construction.
Yeah.
So,
You mean our area?
excuse me?
It's still not a natural
Yeah.
to our area.
Bruce or whatever.
I mean, it's, like I said, I'm not going to throw out the baby with the bathwater. It's just, I've been doing this for many, many, many years. I've taken a lot of courses in it. I think Brittany will support me, that it's a,
My undergraduate is wildlife management.
Yeah.
We're not competing here.
but, I mean, if you don't like it, we'll change it.
No, I said, I don't go along with it, but I wanted people to understand.
I just think that, I find, Brittany to be a pretty expert on this type of thing. And if there's a concern and a request to change it to something else, I would be inclined to
see
go
that,
along
Rick?
with that. Excuse me, I was speaking.
White pine?
And, no, hold on. And, there are trees, not to make a big deal about this, but there's a lot of trees that have been introduced to the area that lately they've been saying, we don't want those anymore. I think it's like
Norway
the
maple.
pear tree and some others that I've seen in the news. I don't know if Leland cypress is part of that whole thing or not, but I just would go along with the agent's recommendation.
Can I speak?
Sure. Chairman.
Yeah,
The
go
chair.
ahead.
May I speak? What would you like to see planted?
I mean, anything native to Cape Cod, I think, would be preferable, but there's tons of options. A lot of them can be beautiful, but that's what I would prefer
Okay.
as an
No
individual.
sweat. Change that.
Trying to think,
Also
is,
confusing to look at that.
I don't have my list with me. Blue spruce, or not blue spruce, black spruce?
Whatever you want.
I mean, does that work for you?
I have to go compare it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, I think it's, I
don't have to
don't
do it right
remember if it's
now.
on the,
I mean, I can get your revised plan tomorrow and find something on the list.
let's do that,
Okay.
so we don't have to belabor this.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with it. We can find something different, and
Okay.
in fact, I'm willing to work with you a little bit, and we'll just do it as a note. You don't even have to just, it's that simple.
Okay,
Just
I
replace.
have it as a note, substitutions, so we can just,
So we'll just
make it a
send an email that
substitution.
replaces it and specifies these 3 trees to be replaced by,
okay.
okay? All right, sounds good. Anything else?
Do we want to talk about the other work or just the restoration plan?
Oh, that's right.
$300 unpaid.
So in terms of the, let's see, the gravel, the patios, chicken coop, trampolines, and gravel driveway.
I'm not prepared to talk about any of that because of my understanding, this is just for the restoration plan.
Okay, so we did with our got the enforcement over here someplace.
I have the
Restoration we addressed.
I don't have anything about structure.
So right now, the gravel driveway.
Did we go over the gravel driveway last hearing?
Yeah, so it didn't make it into the enforcement order, but in the minutes from the last meeting, we spoke also about the unpermitted structures that were on site. And we wanted to wait until we had an as-built plan to see where those were and how large they were to consider next steps for those items. After a previous permit, 1953, was closed, the 50-foot buffer line along these walls was meant, beyond that was the work limit line, so it was not supposed to be crossed. And since then, the patio, trampolines, and driveway were in place after then. And so we delayed handling that until we had an as-built plan. The chicken coop has been there for,
It was my mother's.
and had you always accessed it through that drive?
That road's been there for 50-plus years.
The road didn't show on the as-built plan from the other permit when it was closed. It's not the,
Was the gravel drive, was that it was originally dirt, was that what it was?
Yeah, it's just an access for that
Just
bog.
switched over to gravel now, right?
Yeah. It's been there. That's how we access those overgrown bogs.
Well, I mean, I would say you at least need to permit the change of the driveway and the chicken coop, and
Patio.
I would also say, well, compared to this plan.
This one's better looking.
Because of the planting.
Yeah, the one that they closed out, didn't that say that there was nothing to be between the 50-foot buffer and the wetlands?
yeah, this is the as-built from the closed permit, showing those walls as the only thing at the 50-foot buffer line.
Well, I mean, you could, if you just turn the trampoline 90 degrees, you're out of the 35 at least. But I think more importantly, you need to permit the gravel driveway and the chicken coop, since those are right there. I mean,
What about the patio? That's within the 35.
which,
This one here?
you know,
That's what it says on the,
and that was not included in the original, right? The patio?
according to the note.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, the patio's unpermitted right now.
Unpermitted.
Well, I mean, the patio's in the 35 foot, so I'm not inclined to permit that at all. So I would say move that. I'm not real thrilled with the idea that you have a chicken coop sitting 5 feet away from the wetland, but But it's got to, I mean, it's got to be permitted. I would say the patio needs to come out. The patio, or the chicken coop needs to be permitted. The gravel driveway needs to be permitted.
So there's no enforcement order for this. The enforcement order just.
No, we can put a new one out there, though, can't we?
But I'm taking notes, so, so you want to, what kind of an application? How do you want to deal with it? Or you just want to, is it easy to deal with it through an enforcement order? Or would you want some sort of
No,
filing?
let me know what you guys want and we'll take care of it. Like, I don't need to
Yeah, so
back this out.
this enforcement was for that disturbed area, and we just needed some more information through this as-built plan to get this ball rolling. So it depends. So for permitting, it would be either an RDA or an NOI to permit those.
You issued an enforcement order, just discussing it, you can resolve it faster without chances of appeals or, I mean, if you just.
Yeah, we can revise the enforcement order or issue a new one with these requirements. We just I didn't have the distances away, and we didn't know where the patio was lying, so we needed this as-built plan to continue.
Even a letter, that's willing to fix things, so even a letter or, fine.
Yeah, I mean, I would issue a new order, don't try and go back and amend an order that's already 3/4 of the way done at this point, or it's actually been done. I would just issue a new enforcement order that directs the patio to be removed and the gravel driveway and chicken coop to be, I don't know if I'm gonna make them do that, though. It's like,
Through what kind of permit? I mean, they're.
Could we just do an RDA?
yeah, the road was dirt there before, right?
And the coop's been there for a long time, and
Yeah,
we
so
can
I-
turn the trampoline to get it out of the 35. You do allow decks up to 35.
Yeah, so I'd
you have-
turn the trampoline so you're out of the 35. Remove the patio. File an RDA an after-the-fact RDA for the gravel drive and chicken coop.
Chicken coop, okay.
And we should,
Yeah, that's fine.
I'd say a month to do all of that.
I've got the plan, so that's easy to do now.
Yeah, so a month to file everything, remove the patio, and file the after-the-fact RDA. That make sense? Yes? Board?
Yeah, I'm fine with
Yes.
that.
Brittany, you're good with that?
I'm good with that. I just, did your parents have the chicken coop in place for, it's just not showing up on any of these as-built plans. So how long do you say the chicken coop has been there for?
My mom's been passed for, it's been a while. It was hers. I mean, it's not even my land. Any of this is on, so.
Okay, we'll just leave our RDA then.
I'm confused. What do you mean it's not on your land?
None of this is on my land.
Whose land is it on?
My
His
father's.
parents.
None of it's on my land.
This you,
Oh, yeah.
this is you, and this is you.
It's all cranberry bog. I just think we should be worrying about the disturbed area, and I'm going above and beyond on what I'm planting. Now we're going way back into patio, trampoline. What are the harm to these being there?
So we have a 35-foot no disturb zone, and all of those two items these are all in that 35-foot no disturb zone. That area is meant to be fully vegetated to provide a buffer to the wetland to increase water quality and prevent erosion, and it serves many other purposes. That's why we have the 35-foot no disturb, and having things in there decrease that function. So we would like to see those.
Gotcha.
I worry about the chicken coop
Nitrogen.
and what goes out of that chicken coop and into the wetland.
What would go out of it? It's raised.
Nitrogen.
It's all
What is the,
contained. We use
With the RDA, I would explain what they do with the chicken residue.
Chicken poop?
Chicken. So I would put that all in the RDA.
Yeah.
So there'd be a management protocol with it.
All right, so Brittany, if you could issue a new enforcement order, we'll hear it for next time. We'll
What was your date? What was the deadline?
let's see. So issue the enforcement order. We'll ratify it next meeting, but it just and you're good with the conditions that we're looking to do for the
Permitting and remove the patio.
permitting, removal of the patio, and we just need a date of a month from today.
I'm going to line it up with our filing deadline, so
That'll work.
What's the filing deadline?
we don't have a meeting on July 4th. So
Okay.
July 4th,
July 4th, the deadline?
July 3rd. I know, but we don't have a meeting in July 4th. So
Yeah, but that's
If-
2 months from now.
We're in May.
oh, sorry. So you want the RDA? If you want the RDA heard on June 20th, it has to be
Yeah,
in
so that's
on
the
June
13th
6th.
then, or 6th, sorry.
It's like
It's very
2 weeks.
that's pretty soon.
So you have to file by the 6th in order to be heard on the 20th.
Yeah.
You good? Okay. All right, any further discussion on that?
Oh, we're not voting on the restoration part?
We are voting
Yeah.
to approve the restoration plan.
Okay.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved. Yeah, so
Second.
moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
It's confusing.
All right, next order of business. No, you've already done it. We just had to approve it, that's all. You were approving the plan. Next order of business, a continued notice of intent for SE 83-2422. Town of Yarmouth, DPW, 99 Buck Island Road, proposed discharge of highly treated effluent from the Water Resource Recovery Facility into recharge basins that may impact bordering vegetated wetlands, land subject to flooding, and riverfront area by increasing water levels.
Shorter title next time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff Colby, Public Works Director, joined here by Amy Ball from Horsley Witten and Carolyn Heisen from CDM Smith. Appreciate you hearing this continued application. It's been a work in progress, and that we're dealing with DEP in a process that none of us have experienced before, so this is first of a kind. And we have some additional information we'd like to share with you. As I mentioned to others in the past, we're meeting with DEP staff every other week to try to advance our groundwater discharge permit. We are meeting with them again on Tuesday, and it would, I think, be helpful for us to be able to indicate that we've reviewed this most recent monitoring plan information with you, and it'd be good to. We understand that you need to have some more time to digest the information in this pretty comprehensive document, but it would be helpful for us to tell DEP that you're supportive of that information. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Carolyn.
Yes, so thank you very much. So I realize you have not had a lot of time to see this groundwater monitoring plan. We just finally finalized the approach and monitoring locations with DEP on the 8th. So we are moving as fast as possible. So we want to just walk you through today what the monitoring plan looks like, both for groundwater, surface water, and then also wetlands, and have you a chance to ask any additional questions. So if we go to the first slide, this is just a reminder of,
Gotta click.
oh, I have to push a button.
You don't have to, but you can. Okay. I guess you can't.
There we go. Okay, so just a reminder, this is part of the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. We do have a water resource facility that's 100% design complete, and we've already started groundbreaking for phase 1 of the collection system. And we're looking at permitting highly treated wastewater we're going to turn it to the aquifer and protect the sole source aquifer. So,
If it's not working, then I'll just move it.
no, there we go. Okay. So, and as you saw before, the extent of the simulated groundwater mount, we are asking for a 0.37 MGD permit. So the line there is the extent of impact, and this is where DEP wetlands folks have directed us to look at potential impacts to wetlands within that area. If we move to the next, so this is the groundwater and surface water monitoring plan. So in general, the groundwater and surface monitoring plan, it's a feature of every single groundwater discharge permit. And they generally require 3 wells, 1 up gradient and 2 down gradient. As you can see, we have a lot more than 3 wells. There's actually 14 monitoring locations. We're going to be taking monthly water level locations at all 14 of them. We're going to be putting continuous water level meters in 3 locations. And so this basically tells us every 4 hours what the water level is. So you can see response to rainfall. You can see responses to change in flow at the plant. And we're going to be taking water quality samples at 5 groundwater locations. In addition, because we are so close to surface waters here, we're actually going to be doing surface water monitoring, and this again will also be monthly in conjunction with those groundwater locations. So there's 7 locations where we're taking measurements, so particularly in the bogs and the streams, and that helps tie in how the groundwater is responding to the surface water, since it's one big system here on Cape Cod. And there's 1 continuous water level location. Uniquely here, 5 water quality locations, since the point of all of this is to remove nutrients. We're going to be making sure that the nutrients that are entering, anything that's left over, it's a very small amount, anything that's left over entering the stream, we know how much additional nitrogen's been removed by the sediments as the water flows out through the bog and marsh sediments, which is one of the things the Mass Estuary Project said, is that there's a certain amount of reduction in those. So we will also be monitoring that as we go along. And we are going to be sampling, groundwater sampling be done quarterly at these locations, primarily for nitrogen and phosphorus, and then DEP also requires some volatile organics and sometimes some metals, but we're going to be doing volatile organics annually until basically they indicate that there is not a concern there, and then we will no longer have to monitor there. So that's the groundwater and surface water monitoring plan, and I'm going to hand it over to Amy to talk about the wetlands.
So this image here is just sort of a blow-up of that last plane you saw. We've met out on site now twice with DEP and about a month ago with DEP and with Brittany to identify some locations of where monitoring would happen along transects within the wetlands. We've selected these based upon the existing wetland system and the areas where DEP appeared to be most concerned about any impacts to the resources. So there are 3 transects along Plashes Brook, 1, 2, 3, north to south, and then a 4th one directly south of the infiltration basins in an area that appears to be isolated, but it may not be isolated, but it will still have a slightly different picture because it's not directly adjacent to the stream. And each one of these, we would be adding 2 additional monitoring wells. These would be hand-installed, like a piezometer type thing, that would help us correlate what's happening directly in the wetland with all of the monitoring that is happening for the groundwater and surface water monitoring. And then within each of these transects, we would have up to 6 plots where we would be reviewing the wetlands. So if we can do the next one. So this is sort of a cartoon version of what the monitoring transects would look like. They'll be approximately 50 feet wide, and in order to establish the plots, we would first do a wetland delineation, like any delineation, and then set up monitoring plots, both up gradient and immediately down gradient of the wetland boundaries on both sides of the stream, as well as a monitoring plot immediately adjacent to the stream. And this will give us a sense of what the vegetation communities are when they're in the, the immediate buffer zone, what they are within the upper edges of the wetland boundary, and then what they are very deep into the wetland itself. The monitoring wells will be then, installed just down gradient of the wetland boundaries in each of these with a correlating staff gauge within the stream itself. Sorry, not quite. So this is following sort of the new DEP wetland delineation and data sheets as a model. I'm sure that you're all familiar with the sort of old way you would do data plots where you'd have a concentric circle of, a 30-foot radius for trees and vines, 15 for shrubs and saplings, and 5 feet for herbaceous. In this case, you will be assessing the vegetation in the entire swath, so at least 50 feet wide. And then the width, the depth of each of the plots would be variable. We're going to try and tie them using survey to the contours in these areas. So they'll have to be field assessed for each of these areas. And then we will stake them out with, bean poles or, something that will be more permanent, and GPS locate those, because we're going to need to be able to find them twice a year for 5 years to try and correlate what we're seeing in the vegetation. And then next. So as I mentioned, we're going to establish the baseline conditions in each of these plots with a delineation, the wells and the staff gauges. We'll collect the water levels. We'll establish some photo stations in each one of the plots so that you can correlate, visually the conditions from year to year. And then we will document the soil conditions at the, as a part of the baseline condition over the course of 5 years, unless there's some dramatic change. You're not going to find that in 5 years. You're lucky if you'll find it in 10 or 15. But we'll document that just, as a baseline. And then that baseline monitoring will happen for at least, one full growing season prior to the wastewater recovery.
Wastewater resource recovery
facility goes online.
Water resource recovery facility? Might be water resource recovery facility.
Water resources.
There must be an easier anagram for that.
You would think.
It's even difficult to say WRRF. So, I don't know, this is the next slide, right? So, after that goes online, then we would be doing, twice annual monitoring, not unlike what you would do for like a wetland replication area, wetland replacement area, where you monitor all the vegetation, basically do a data sheet in each one of those plots, and then, assess also the health and vigor of the plants. And we were going to be focusing on plants within each of these. They'll document the species in each of the plots, but focusing on facultative species, any upland species, like, the pines that may be, on hummocks. And, those will be the ones that will maybe be the first indicators if there's anything that's being affected by, increased water levels. Again, we'll photo document everything at those same stations. And then confirm the wetland boundaries at the end of each growing season to see if that's still, what you would assess as a wetland boundary. And then this is just a sample of the type of table we would be creating for each of the plots that, documenting the type of species, the tree, shrub, vine, herbaceous, the common Latin name, the Region 1 indicator status. We'll use the 2020 status for the purposes of carrying forward, because we know DEP will eventually approve that. And then the water depth and tolerance is something we have a couple of different documents on. They're not, it's qualitative, it's not quantitative per se. And the type of community in which it's growing. So based on the Cowardin classification. So, a palustrine forested wetland, a palustrine shrub swamp, emergent marsh. And the three communities along Plashes Brook, two are forested. One is forested in sort of trending shrub swamp, and the third is more of a shrub swamp condition. So we'll be able to see those different types of communities in those particular transects. I think that is, well, then we have annual monitoring, of course. We would collect the data, twice a year, and then report back to the Conservation Commission and Mass DEP, who will also be interested in this information, on not only the data that are collected, but the hydrology of each of the plots. We will take into account if there are drought conditions or particularly wet seasons over the course of the growing season, and then correlate the data, which is something that would work with CDM Smith and the wetland scientists to determine, is the data that we're seeing and collecting, is that consistent with the modeling that was prepared for this project, and then identifying any potential impacts, whether they're positive or negative, to the wetland plant communities, and then, report back to the Conservation Commission probably annually, November, December timeframe, to discuss the results of our findings and discuss whether there's anything that we may need to take any action on. And then after that initial 5-year period, we would, in conjunction with DEP, with the Conservation Commission, determine whether the long-term monitoring would need to continue annually, twice annually, whether that's a good idea for a longer period of time, or if it can be, the schedule could be changed up. I think that's about it. It was rather fast, quick overview of what we've presented in the paper form that you all have. And we'll turn it back over for questions.
Questions from the board right now?
How many,
And-
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
How many of these wetland monitoring areas do you think you'll have?
All of, we have 6, 9, I think the one in the isolated, the southernmost, the Plashes Brook 4, PB4, there will probably only be 4 in that one, so we're looking at about 13 plots.
Sorry.
That's right. I was just saying I had really no questions at this point.
Jack?
Why don't you have a fourth off to the southwest? I think I know the answer, but
Well, Carolyn, you're gonna have to help me.
Off to the southwest where the cranberry bogs are?
well, so there's some wetlands there, right?
Cranberry
Not
bogs.
much.
It's, yeah, I mean, south of, the cranberry bogs are really off to the southwest. Are you asking about kind of to the southern area?
Yeah.
So basically,
Yeah, down in,
Were you?
I think it was largely because we had taken a look at the plants over in here.
yeah, no, right in here, like that, this area, all that area here. That's, I mean, part of it, I think, is because it's only between the point, like the impact from the discharge effluent isn't expected to impact the groundwater there as substantially as the locations that were selected.
So the groundwater is really mostly going over to the southeast.
Right.
And do you have any idea what the difference is percentage-wise? How much goes through any one of these sectors, or?
So there's the mound.
Yeah.
Which is actually the increase in water, but is not necessarily where the effluent flows.
Yeah,
So I
no,
do
I
want to flag that. So the effluent is actually going to be going into Plashes Brook and into Swan Pond, and about 30% of it will go into, a third of it will go into Plashes Brook, and 2/3 of it is actually going to ultimately go down to Swan Pond. And the time of travel on average to Plashes Brook will be 240 days. And Swan Pond is longer than that, and I can't remember the number off the top of my head. So the transects are also not just the areas of high impact from water, but also from if there is any change in nutrients in the water, they would impact those plants in that area. That answer your question?
You bet. indicator species or keystone, there's quite a bit of controversy over the last 30 years, but it's changing about how they look at that in relationship to, you're doing a pretty good cross-section, you're going to get everything. But how do you pick out, in this approach, how do you pick out what is going to be the keystone, or you think you will ever come down to picking out those?
Well, the species that would be the most focused on would be those that are more facultative, not used to, wet feet all year long or for a longer period of the growing season. I know that one of the species we had discussed was the Atlantic white cedar. That isn't in the zone of influence in this particular site, but we anticipate that this type of model, this is the first phase of potentially 8 phases, correct?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
In the big
more
picture
sites
of
to come,
things.
yes.
There are more sites to come, and so,
You have a lot of time to figure it out.
yes, we do have some time to figure that out. But I do think that, and some of the herbaceous species may be something we'd want to keep an eye on, too.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly there's a lot that goes into this, and you know a lot about it. But the thing that I wonder about is, you talk about collecting data and monitoring things. Well, what happens if you see things going a way you don't want it to go? How do you pull back on this? Or do you? What happens?
That's yours.
So speaking of the future phases,
Yeah.
that is basically what we start to look at. So we're going to be looking at additional phases. So eventually there'll be additional locations. And if we do start to see a negative impact, we would start shifting flow to other locations.
Can you do that through the treatment plants or something?
Yes, so
Yeah.
the plant there'll be various pumps to move water around to different locations.
I see.
Right now, I'm pretty confident we're not going to see much impact because the site is currently in use for a discharge part of the year for the septage plant. That flow is going to be used for reclaimed water, but right now there'll be piping to move flow around within the community, so.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to Carolyn's comments. So this is only one portion of the flow in just our first phase. A more significant amount of flow is really targeted towards Bayberry Hills. So this is the immediate location of the treatment plant and infiltration beds that'll be most convenient. But the largest portion of the flow in phase 1 is actually headed towards the Bayberry Hills. That's roughly 1 million gallons for the first phase, and the permit here was 0.37, something like that. So probably 2/3 of the flow is really headed towards Bayberry Hills and irrigation there, or subsurface recharge up towards the Mid-Cape Highway.
So headed towards Bayberry Hill, this is the stuff that confuses me, and I won't go on too much, but in the form of being piped there?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. All right, and the other discussion you have is about groundwater, and this is water that's discharged and kind of works naturally through the soil, and how deep down would that discharge be? Is that a ridiculous question?
No, we are actually, the way it works is basically there's big sand beds
Yeah.
and the water gets poured and it just kind of filters through that unsaturated zone and gets down to the water table. The water table here is 8 to 12 feet roughly below the ground surface.
Yes.
And then it just starts flowing naturally towards any surface waters that you see. Anywhere you see a kettle pond on Cape Cod, that's basically the groundwater, right? And depending on, where it is and the time of year, flow in Plashes Brook will be made up of flow that is coming from Plashes Pond that's being released by the Cranberry Bog operator. It might be released by, if it's a really rainy spring, all that water that's in that subsurface right next to the brook is going to be flowing into that brook there. Some of it will come from the recharged effluent. Some of it, like I said, is actually going to flow underneath and keep going and head towards Plashes Pond.
Okay,
So
all right,
in
thanks.
3 dimensions.
Very good, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Not for me. No.
Yeah. maybe Jeff will answer it more than, but I'm curious as to why DEP is interested so much in the distance between their bottom of the infiltration basins and the groundwater.
So it actually comes from the Title V regulations for septic systems that says there has to be 4 feet. So they just use it as kind of a rule of thumb.
So there's really no what's the actual, it has to be,
I think that it's there because the idea is like if something in your plant were to fail and you were to release a bacteria or something, there'd be 4 feet of separation. But it's a highly treated plant.
so recovery zone or something, what you might say.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
DEP
you.
is very conservative in their approach, so I think
Yes.
we're seeing this on all fronts.
Right.
Yes.
I'm not trying to attack them.
No, but that's where it comes from. It comes from the Title V.
One quick question, do you foresee, maybe Jeff, you have to answer this, but do you foresee any more changes coming from the DEP, or are we at a point where we understand where they're coming from, and that's what we're working on, and we won't see any more?
Well, that's a good question. I'd say that we've spent a lot of time on this monitoring plan. I think they're very comfortable with this. And so our hope is over this next meeting, and certainly by the one after with DEP, that we are very comfortable that we'll be getting the authorization to advertise for the treatment facility. We get closer every meeting. It's a lengthy process, and I wish it was a little quicker, but it's where we are, and we're making progress.
Anything else? Brittany, anything?
No, thank you.
Anybody in the audience? Anybody on Zoom? Well, people seem to have all your questions. Do you need more questions and more time, or do you want to go ahead and vote?
I'm okay to vote personally.
It's pretty extensive, a lot of work done, put into this.
I'll make a motion to that.
Okay.
How would we phrase that?
A motion to approve the project with special conditions?
Yeah,
In the form of a
Motion.
5-year
Oh.
order of conditions.
make the motion first, then I'll.
We're requesting a 5-year order of conditions, just to be clear.
What'd you say?
Well,
They're requesting a 5-year order of conditions. So
5-year order
it
of
has to just be a
conditions.
specific motion.
so my only question of that is, like, I understand why you're doing it. But is there a reason why we can't just issue a 3-year and then have you come back for an extension?
There's no reason.
Well, because I
this
think
would be
it's the
easier.
5-year idea was that then it takes 2 years to build the plant. And then we do 3 years of monitoring. So a 3-year would only really get us to 1 year after the plant construction.
Yeah.
Was my idea.
Hmm?
You don't want to do it?
We could do it, 3 years.
I don't care. It's like-
Well,
So we'll go 5 years. It's been asked, it's answered. Is it 5
2
years?
years to build the plant?
I do,
Is there a second?
Second,
All those in favor?
Wait a minute, I think,
Wait,
I had a question.
I have
Yes.
to know what the motion is again, please.
It's to issue order of conditions for 5 years with special conditions.
My only question is, under what condition, you talked about coming back every year for the report, which seems to me, maybe in the first year or two, that's fine, but after that, what happens, or what kind of emergency or change in conditions would make you come back to us more often?
I suppose if we found something that was,
unexpected.
unexpected, and then, if that were a condition that, if we find something even in the spring, that we would report back to the Conservation Commission.
I guess what I'm asking is something to the administrator, maybe, that you could come in
And discuss it.
more appropriately twice a year, 3 times, I'm not too sure what that might be.
So one of the conditions will be that if monitoring reveals something
Yeah.
even modestly alarming, that they need to come back and report it and report on how they're going to move forward. I think with a monitoring plan, that's kind of expected. If they're hoping not to see anything. The goal is nothing changes. But if they are finding something, they will let us know, and they'll have to submit how they're going to take care of it.
Great.
Well, even if they don't find anything, is it good to just come back and say everything is going fine?
Yeah, so that's what the monitoring reports
Yeah,
will show
okay.
us, that
Right.
they should be revealed every year. I don't expect, if there even were to be any changes, to see something in a year or two. It would be
okay.
it would take longer than that to find changes.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second, I already seconded it.
Ellie has it.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
I'm just going to hand the
All right,
paper
good
down.
luck.
in case
Thank you.
Don't lose the paper going down here, people. I'm
Jeff,
not
are you in
passing
your,
the file.
Jeff, are you in your office tomorrow? Yes. Can I give you a call?
Actually, we can just put that together. That way at least we have something. Oh, here, you can.
Oh, and here's a paperclip, too. Oh,
Even a paper.
Next order of business is a new notice of intent for SE 83-2431, Arnold B. Chase, 0 Great Island Road, filing for emergency sandbag reinforcement barrier and coastal dune barrier and coastal beach land subs, coastal storm flowage. We have a request for a continuance. Apparently, it's not quite as much of an emergency as we thought then. Woods Hole Group is asking for a continuance from May 16th, 2024.
The June 20th.
Unfortunately, some of the Great Island Homeowners Association board members have scheduling conflicts on that evening. They're unable to attend. Reschedule the above reference to, oh, sorry, there you go. I had my thumb over it. To June 20th, 2024. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Opposed?
Did we vote
Carries
against?
unanimously. Next order of business, another notice of intent for Margaret Awad, 911 Great Island Road, proposed sediment replenishment within a coastal beach, coastal dune, and land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Okay, so that's getting continued. What number, what are we on? Mayflower, right?
No, 911 Great Island.
Oh, sorry.
This case, we need to refer to the plan. We have one, physical. I am Bob Perry, Cape Cod Engineering, working with the AWADS at 911 Great Island Road. This location is on the west side of the island, and the site itself has been the subject of a previous coastal management project. It was fiber rolls. A portion of that held up okay on the north end, and the southern half of it dissolved fairly readily. Some of the debris from that fiber roll project remains. There are anchors, and there was a geotextile, like a Marify 600X fabric used, and that's it embedded into the beach. It probably shows up in some of the photographs that we provided. This project is, for the moment, the AWADS are concerned about the dramatic beach erosion and the related bank erosion. The winter of 23-24 really hit it. And we resurveyed it basically to see, we had about 8 feet of loss on the south end here just in December and January. And that boulder, you see, the glacial erratic, was right up against the bank in November. So they have consulted with their own island group, they've consulted with Stan Humphreys, they've consulted with me, and at the moment, they feel that for the value that it has, which is limited, they would like to add sediment to the toe of the bank. So The quantity that we put into the application is 600 cubic yards, and it would come to the site in the same way that the other project was accessed, which is through an access road that exists on the north. And from there, the sand would be distributed through this zone. I don't think you're going to see as much sand as the total, but we put in a 600 cubic yard maximum. And I would say that for the frequency of those additions, it would probably be related to storm damage. And the sense of it is that these beaches on Great Island have been burdened by a system of groins for 70 years, probably. And while those groins do have a positive effect in some areas, they have a negative effect in others. This particular location, you can see it's scalloped out. The beach to our south is healthy. And it will be of interest to see if the additions of sand, which, again, some folks don't have the resources for this. Here's a case where we do, and there's an interruption of the sediment littoral system that this will help to offset. There's no hard structures proposed, no anything except for sediment, and because we did file for a certificate of compliance for the fiber roll project that was in 2008, what's connected to the issuance of that compliance certificate is the cleanup of the remnants that are embedded in the sand, and it really isn't a job that can be done by hand. So the loader that would bring this sand out here will also tug out these pieces of that project where there's steel cables and fabric and all that. So we have an opportunity to put a machine on a beach and clean it out, replenish the near shore or near bank area well above the high tide line, and see if it inhibits to some extent the loss of the bank for now. And that's really what we're dealing with. We provided a sieve analysis. There's a lot of cobble and rubble and slipper shells and you name it on this beach. The bank material is a combination of some fill and glacial material. I think this isn't far from the old Great Island Hotel, which burned down sometime in the 20s. And the sediment here is very typical beach sand, but with a rock quantity. And it is our hope. There was a comment in the DEP comments that you get when you get your file number, which we do have, that they talk about grain size consistency. And there just needs to be some realism with that. This sediment is at least most conveniently sourced from an upland source. We don't have any dredge material that's available. If we had dredge material, or if Hyannis Harbor ever wanted to have an additional disposal site, we're permitting this as a sediment disposal site. But we're going to be, I think, fairly consistent, reasonably consistent with the grain size that's here. But it's a little bit fine. That's what it showed up in the sieve analysis. But we're not sieving rocks and cobbles and gravel, but we're just acknowledging that it's there. So we don't want to be placing fine sand on this beach. It'll be medium to coarse with a fairly good color for brightness, not orange. And we just want to get that across because upland sources aren't perfect. And DEP has a 10% silt quantity in their guidelines for beach nourishment. You won't find anything greater than probably 2% in an upland source here. So that's where we are on this. Happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Questions from the board?
I do have one when we were out there, if you could go to some of the photos. The high tide line from the debris, I mean, that's high there, but.
That's a storm tide.
Yeah, that's a storm tide, but it did seem that it was still a little higher than what's marked on here. It's
Well, we
probably
have a
more
mean-
like the two.
We have a mean high
The
tide on
two,
there.
yeah.
Not the high. the federal government has a high tide line criteria for
Yeah.
jurisdiction, and Massachusetts has a mean. They're about, I think they're slightly less than a half a foot apart on the charts. We have a lot of high tides these days. We're seeing a little bit of sea level rise, we're seeing storms and wind, but you
is
see
from
that,
last year.
I think it's codium that's piled up along the shore there with the slipper shells. Even that, we're probably just about to, I don't think we'll get out that far with the fill. And that's not, we've got the numbers for the beach, so we know where those are.
Well, that last photo showed the old coir logs
Way out there.
way out, right there, and it shows on your plan here that the sand will be going out farther than that to basically where
Right.
the seaweed is.
Yeah, that location there is where the erosion was slightly less. That's, if you look at the overall,
There we are.
the north end of this groin bay, between the two groins is probably a 600-foot distance.
That's a good distance.
Is much higher on the north, because we do have the development of sediment that's piling up against that north groin. So we have less damage. But we're not nourishing in the hole. I think a lot of our sediment may be claimed by that hole, but that's really not our property. And
So it's above high.
oh, we're well above high tide, yes.
Misleading being out there seeing the slipper shells and everything, but I did know that was storm tide. It's high, which is what we're getting all the
Not even a
time.
storm, it could be an astronomical high tide.
know, that's-
But that's still well above the
I
average.
said we're getting them all the time, so it's not.
Yeah,
really
yeah, you're
storm.
noticing that, huh? Yeah, well, get ready.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so you're protecting this area with sand.
It's enhancing the sediment deposit of the beach, which will provide some limited protection.
And certainly it is problematic because it's such a beautiful location, it's a beautiful house, all the rest of it. But it seems like, how long do you think this sand, first of all, how long will the sand, 600 cubic yards of sand plus, I don't know, I forgot my other thought, but how long do you think it will?
Weather dependent.
Yeah.
I think that we have an applicant that's been watching their beach get pummeled,
Yeah.
and they've asked us to do this. I mean, I've suggested alternatives, core fiber lifts, sand lifts. They're different than fiber rolls. They're burritos. They have some mass to them, but if they break, they're just going to dispose of their sand. But that was an aesthetic issue. And so the periodic addition of sediment, it has two values, I think. It provides a sacrificial measure of protection that a weak storm could claim some of it. A severe storm will claim all of it.
Yeah.
That material could raise the beach and cut down the frequency of incursions into the fill if this practice were to be continued. Technically, there should not be any downside to additions of sediment from an upland source on this beach if it were to go on, say, for the term of the order of conditions. We can evaluate it, take a look. It's no different than severe bank erosion. So there won't be any nourishment between, say, June and September because they close the island to everything. And I think it'll just be as needed. And I would predict, in my own experience here, you could find the sand deposit persisting for 6 months. But again, it's weather. It's weather.
Yeah, and when if the sand goes out, when it goes out, it goes into Lewis Bay.
Well, it goes to the beach. Its initial location is to the immediate near shore area, and it will then be distributed.
Detrimentally?
I don't think so.
Okay.
If you look at, there's a dredge channel offshore here, and going toward Hyannis Harbor a little more. There's more boat wakes on calm days with a high tide. There's boat wakes that are affecting the beach. I don't believe that quartz sand properly acquired from a borrow condition, which is pure glacial clean, has any negative impact on a location like this.
Okay.
I have a question about the groins. You mentioned them, you kind of went from one way to the other. You said that they get in the way, and then you said and they do some good things. First of all, I'm trying to figure out where the groins are on this.
Well, we have a groin to the very far left,
Right, so see that.
and we have a stone formation that's actually partially buried because it has built up so much.
Okay, where it says existing stone groin right to the right.
Those are licensed. Chapter 91 license 176. And they cut both ways.
Okay. I know when we were down further towards the gates on the other side of the wooden bridge, when we were down there, I remember Rick.
Causeway?
Yeah, I remember Rick Bishop asked about getting rid of the groins. And that's, I guess I'm playing the Rick Bishop card, and I'm just wondering why we don't.
Interesting. A good question. Two things. There's probably a very strong debate about their efficacy, and overall, while you do have a hollow and a hole developing, you have a buildup on one side. And groins, if you were to propose them today, they are always going to be coupled with a nourishment requirement, that they be filled to an entrapment level. Some of the old groins detach from the land, and then if they're going to be maintained, they need to be reattached and maintained with sand. In many ways, what we're doing here with this fairly small volume is we're accommodating what would be a mandatory requirement for groin maintenance, adding sand. On the causeway, I'm not dealing with that here, but in my own experience, overall, on the south side of Cape Cod, we have some very significant negative effects at the mouths of the estuaries and to the east of those estuaries. But overall, an example of Dennisport and Yarmouth from Great Island all the way to the Bass River, if you didn't have those groins, I think you'd have a lot more trouble.
I have a follow-up. Are you planning on planting any sacrificial grass on this to try and stabilize it
I don't think it's going to stay there long enough.
long enough?
I really see this as beach nourishment.
Okay.
If we were doing a dune, I could see it, but I don't think it's
This is
practical.
just, and you say you don't think the sand's going to last there, depending on the weather, 6 months, or
If,
what would be the frequency of your replenishment?
well, I'm saying as the applicant with an order of conditions chooses to check in with you, because no activity is going to occur otherwise, if they were getting 6 months out of a dose of 600 cubic yards, and let's say going into the winter season, they chose to nourish again, I could see this as once per year. At the most, I would think twice. And applicants can become discouraged also if it gets to be too much.
Yeah.
Where does
Well,
this-
we were out there at a pretty low tide, and it was pretty shallow offshore there from all that erosion there, and that's exactly where it's going to go.
Well, that's it, and marginal increases. I mean, if you look at the Wetland Act, coastal beaches are significant to storm damage prevention because they buffer the next hierarchy of the coast, which is the dune or the coastal bank or the salt marsh. And this has nothing but beneficial components toward, well, we're talking little, these are minor, increments toward supporting the interests of storm damage prevention and flood control. And if we have an applicant that wants to do this, we can try to talk them out of it, and we always talk to them about the pros and cons. But here we have a case where somebody would like to add sediment,
And they've already done the soft solution that they find just isn't working.
and they added sediment to that, and now it's just sediment.
And I guess my only comment would be that this area that's deeply eroded is pretty small in comparison to the total length of their land. I mean, it's significant. but that if they were to put in plantings or something, it might even it out to that.
If you get to the crest of the coastal bank, it's very well vegetated.
Yeah.
It's gnarly, but,
Exactly.
but it just cleaves off because it's gravity that's working.
But my point is, this is quite an inundation, this is quite a what's the,
Like a concavity?
yes, and compared to the rest, and if you could overcome that and make it more even, I'm not,
Oh, we're thinking about it. Believe me, there's
Okay.
concepts of breakwaters, and it's really long-term. If you look at that southern end,
yeah,
the
Well, yeah.
groin to the south is having an effect. And I think it's fair for me to say it's being looked at.
okay.
Okay, anybody else? Brittany?
Do the AWADs own 921 Great Island Road as well?
That is open space, and the Great Island Realty Trust is the steward of that.
Okay. I did not notice that it overlapped onto, did you include them on your application?
Yes.
Okay,
We've got
great.
Mr. Arnold B. Chase's signature on our application for that lot.
For this lot. Okay. And only because I know NHESP will ask, what is the slope of the front side slope?
It's probably 1 to 5 or so. I mean, it's going to change. As soon as the water hits it,
Yeah.
it's going to be steep, and it's stylized, has to be. I bet it'll be shallow, truthfully, because when you add this, you try to compact it a little bit, and it's not going to be as perfect a shape as you see on that plan.
Okay. And the only other comment I have is that if you kind of have an open-ended frequency in mind, I would probably would like to see a condition limiting it to at most twice annually. Does that sound like?
Well, if we can't work with that, we'd come talk with you. For example, it is claimed ridiculously fast. Then we'd come in, I don't know if it would require an amended order, but if you term that condition, for example, no more frequent than twice a year without conferring, that would be fair.
Ed, what does the board think? Just the amount, if it's more than 3 times, it seems like an alarming amount of sand. But I am generally supportive of the concept of beach nourishment. It just 3 times seems like a lot.
I mean, you're gonna have to come back to us no matter what. I mean, you're gonna have to let us know that you're
Correct.
Nourishing.
that you're nourishing anyhow. So every time you do that, I think
Notify
it
each time.
gives the ability for you to say,
No, that's enough.
wait. So I think
As long as we have that discourse, I have no problem with that.
So that's twice a year
add it
or
like
as
twice a
needed?
year,
Or as needed?
Or as allowed.
Per request.
as or as permitted, I guess would be the better way to say it. Pending prior approval of the
Okay.
commission.
Or
Since there will be nothing in the summer from those months, it seems reasonable. I doubt it's going to be 2.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have, don't you have, you're
The
still gonna have
winter.
time of year restrictions for flounder too, right?
Just wait till we hear from NHESP.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That could take care of a lot of this. Most of that term of work time restriction is probably already restricted. It'll be April to September, April to August. But we haven't even got that yet, so we need that from them. And it is only the northern portion of this area.
And you did apply, correct, for,
We did.
yes, they did.
Yeah, it's where we need it the
Just haven't
least,
gotten it
actually.
yet.
Where the birds are is where we need it the least. And right now, we're not talking about segmenting. If they had to get in there in April to June, they'd talk about bird monitoring and try to bring somebody along.
well, you'll have to add
Ellen
whatever
has.
NHESP comments come in, whatever they do.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, anybody in the audience? Anybody on Zoom?
Yes, anybody?
Unless anybody has any further comments or questions from the board, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project pending, with special conditions, pending the testimony? We're going to have to continue this for solely for the
Right.
NHESP
Narrative, yeah.
comment, but
So you're
actually,
continuing.
do you want to wait and close it then?
I'm sorry, what is your question?
Do you want to wait until we get NHESP comment to
It's kind of up
close
to
it?
Bob. If he's
Well,
comfortable
it's-
taking it
you
full
know, it's,
sail, then
I mean, we're just going to,
Such a straight guy, it's customary, I hate to say it, but we'd be happy with an approval contingent. But then you would have to reopen, and if there was something really.
let's just
kind
continue.
of-
my only concern is
There's
like,
I don't have a
anything-
problem with
if
you waiting,
something
because we
goes
can't get you to
on-
vote.
yeah.
What would you do? You'd get the NHESP comment letter, bake it into the order.
Yeah.
You'd be voting on the order next time anyway.
As long as NHESP, let's just
It might-
continue for
I
NHESP
think-
comment,
I think,
because
it would
otherwise we
avoid
may,
potential trouble.
otherwise we may end up, this will be the time when NHESP
Say
goes
something
back to
wild.
3-month reviews, and now we've
Oh, don't say
closed the
that.
hearing.
No, but
And
I'm
we're sort
I'm
of
okay with
waiting, we're
that.
in limbo, so.
I realize that we're waiting for them. We got to go till next 2 weeks from now anyway.
All right, so that's June
6.
6th. Would somebody like to make a motion to continue to June 6th and solely for NHESP comment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and then we'll see you on the 6th.
Yes,
Thank you.
good question.
Thanks, Bob. Next order of business is another notice of intent for SE 83-2415, Joe Drain 165 Mayflower Terrace, proposed reconstruction elevation of stairs, pier, and boathouse and land under the ocean, coastal bank, salt marsh, riverfront area, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and land containing shellfish.
Good evening, Roy Okarowski, WRS Engineering. Representing Joseph Drain, the owner of the property. There's an existing stairway above mean high water, pier, boathouse on piles, and a floating dock.
This isn't it.
It's all licensed. What we're proposing to do is replace the stairway in kind, the pier in kind, but raising it 2 feet, and then driving 6 new piles underneath the boathouse. By lifting up the boathouse, driving the piles and putting it back, the framing of the boathouse is fine. Plan to do this
Yeah.
basically from water with small equipment. They can't get a barge in there. So we're going to use most likely helical piles that are hand-driven off a tripod. And then basically put up with an encasement on them. The house doesn't weigh that much, so it's not a big project. During this process, it was identified that there was a COC that was not finished, that actually Mr. Perry filed, but in the process of buying and selling the house, the owner thought it was done, so he's been working with Brittany to get the fence removed, the plantings done, and everything that was asked. We believe the T taken out of the dock. We don't see any disturbance to the marsh in this. The marsh sort of fringes right around the work limit. The docks, we're not doing anything with the dock or anything out there. It meets the license requirements once we took out the T. And at this point, we can answer questions or concerns from the board about this basic project.
Questions from the board?
Well, I was out there on the site and noticed walking up and down the stairs, which were pretty rickety, there were cinder blocks underneath there. Can we have those removed and some sort of ground cover put in there and protect it until it grows up to
Yeah,
a certain
we'd be
extent?
happy to have it conditioned
Yeah.
that way.
It's, It's obviously the old steps before they put the
Yes.
old steps in.
It's been, him and his brother purchased it not too long ago, and I think they've done it, you know, as soon as they found out that, you know, about the plants and the fence and all that kind of stuff, they stepped right up, and they're happy to improve the property to your satisfaction.
Going to the plants, do you have pictures of the fence there? It may behoove them because it is on, well, that's the seawall.
Sorry.
It may behoove them because it is on such a sharp bank that if they're going to be watering those, to put some sort of silt sock or something along the outside of that fence to keep everything from just draining right down, because right now it's just bare ground. And there's nothing to keep it from eroding down if you're going to water all those plants to keep them alive. Just a small little, I don't know,
Waddle?
Put jute, well, I mean, you could put jute matting down if you're,
yeah, jute mat.
That's
yeah,
fine.
Something like that.
Whatever,
yeah.
whatever you feel is fine. They're really receptive to that kind of thing.
That's all I have.
anybody else?
There's a note here that says the shellfish survey is needed. Is that still true?
We went to Waterways, and they approved the project, and they mentioned that if the commission wanted, we'd be happy to do some contribution for shellfish. They didn't require a shellfish survey at the meeting.
Oh, they sent me a memo today about their meeting, and they said they voted unanimously to accept contingent on the replacement of the pilings and conducting a shellfish survey prior to receiving a permit.
All right, that's fine. That's kind of backwards.
So I think originally it was just, to be clear, you're just replacing all of these pilings in the same footprint.
Yeah, I don't see what the shellfish survey
Usually
would
we wouldn't
do.
require a survey if we're doing in the same footprint. So I don't know.
They're putting in new pilings, though.
Yeah, but they're taking the old pilings out.
Just taking the old ones out and
And the
putting new
new
ones in the same holes.
Right in the same spot, so I don't know why exactly you're worrying about.
If you've been before that board lately, they're kind of not very, they're all talking on different paths. I was there Monday night, and it was very difficult to get anything across in a professional way that was understood. And I think it's just because I forget the lady's name, she's on it. You know, she knows exactly what's going on, but some other people just say stuff randomly. And maybe that, we can clarify that, and if, it just seems like that's a pretty big expense for nothing.
Yeah, so we'll have to confirm with Natural Resources on that because we're the
Wasn't at that
permitting.
Well, I was at the last meeting, but not the one where.
It is in
this
their
one,
memo, but
Mary-
we are the
Mayflower
permitting
Terrace was
body.
under.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see the use of doing a survey, shellfish survey, if we're taking the piles out and putting piles right back in again.
And are you replacing all of the pilings or just some of them?
All of them except not the ones holding the
Float.
pier, not those two.
Okay.
It was, my representative at the meeting stated explicitly to me that they wanted a contribution for shellfish. They didn't say anything about a
I'm
shellfish
not doing that
survey
either.
in the minutes. Yeah, I kind of, it's up to you, but I don't think it's necessary.
No, we've been through, we did this, what, 20 years ago, we had this argument and conversation. It's like, I don't think that's, again, what do you,
It's the same
why
footprint.
why are you making people put shellfish in for a place where there's obviously no shellfish because there's piles?
Right.
So that's just, no, that's wrong. I'm sorry.
Oh, I may have missed it. You're doing this from the shore because it's too shallow to do
Well,
this?
I don't recommend bringing a barge in there. Just,
'Cause I was going to ask that it be removed during low tide, but if.
I mean,
you're
if
doing
the,
it from-
you know, he hasn't chosen a contractor, if the contractor wants to do it, you know, the conditions are in there, and they're in my notes as
That
well, that
doesn't
it can't
ground
ground
out?
out.
Yeah, okay.
It's all in the performance standards.
That's just, I'm
yeah.
fine with that as long as you're just, the condition is just the barge camp isn't allowed to ground out,
Yep.
so. All right, anybody else? Brittany, anything?
The only other thing that DMF commented, it looks like the current float is very, very shallow. And since we're upgrading the entire pier, would you be considering float stops?
You can't, there's only two piles.
There's only 2 piles. So how low, but you don't show the distance, how low, how shallow is it at low tide?
It's an existing licensed pier. The existing license says, and I can pull it off my drawing, it came out exactly the
No, it's
same.
licensed, but you're rebuilding
Yeah.
part of
No,
it.
We're not touching that. And it's an easy float too. You can't put float stops on it.
Float stops.
It's not,
So why can't you put float stops on it?
If you're rebuilding it, it has to usually rebuild
if we put 2
within,
more piles, we'd have to get a new license first of all.
You need more piles.
And you'd need 4 piles, and you can't support a regular float is a single structure. Easy docks are just pieces of plastic that are stuck together with those little kind of notch pieces. So if you tried to support it at that distance, it would just bend in half.
at 5 on the outside and about 2.5.
Okay, just,
Two and a
that's
half
their
on the
comment. I
inside.
agree with them, but if you can't do it without more pilings, then I guess it's unreasonable.
You can't do it with that kind of dock either. And it says, that's why they have an easy float. You know, that's why, that when they turned that one, it was unstable. We made them put it back to the license.
Okay, I got another special condition. It looks like it's been left in there all winter long. Can we put a special condition that it's removed
Yep,
seasonally?
I was on them about that, and they explained it to them, that it can't be left in. And they have made arrangements to get it off there, and I told them they can't store it on their property in front either. They have to take it away.
No, that's all.
Anybody in the audience? Anybody on Zoom? Any further discussion or question among the board? Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. You caught up, Billy?
Yep, I'm caught up.
Next order of business is another notice of intent for SE 83-2435. Donna Martell, 60 Grandview Drive, proposed construction of pier, ramp, and 200 square foot float in a coastal beach, coastal bank, land under the ocean, and land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Good evening, Roy Okarowski. I'm representing the applicants are the Rosito family, who is here with me. The owner of the property, who's in the process of, she's still the owner, she's selling it to these people, is Donna Martell, DGM Trust. She has owned the property for 45 years? In the 60s. In Hurricane Bob, 95? I had an argument about it last night with someone, but
91,
92.
91.
91, because it's the year my son was born.
There was an existing licensed pier that was destroyed, and she just, over time, didn't have the resources and time, and just never put it back, so the license lapsed. There's still evidence of the old stairway on a little platform to the water in the location where we're proposing the new pier. One note is that if you look at the original license for the pier, it showed it in the middle of the lot. They never built it there. They licensed it there, they never built it there. And the reason they didn't, because the farther you move to the east, the deeper the water gets. There's a sandbar there. So when they were gonna build that one, they noticed it wasn't at a good enough depth, so they moved it over here and built it. And I don't have any evidence of what they actually built or how far out. But we're meeting the town bylaw in terms of length from mean high water, depth at the end of the pier, depth at the inside of the pier. We had a shellfish survey done by John Lowell, who represented at Waterways, and this is a very abundant shellfish area. It was one of the highest percentages of shellfish. It's noted on the plan in the table. And to note, he also did the shellfish survey for the pier that was built a few years ago to the west and found the same things. And I guess his main point from a resource area is that these piers are not any detriment to shellfish, because there's just a huge amount of shellfish here, and there's piers all over the place. That was basically, I'm just paraphrasing his statements to Waterways for the board. The one comment I saw from DMF about the floats is that she said the flotation on the bottom of the floats was below the level. All floats on Cape Cod are built with roughly a 6-inch flotation tub protruding below the bottom of what we're calling the bottom. So there, we're showing it a foot. It's really about 6 inches. That's just our generic drawing. So there is no, because of the 6-inch depth of the flotation, there really is no shadowing, as they were talking about in the letter. We didn't really understand it. Waterways didn't seem to care, but I'm just notifying you in terms of, I saw that comment there. The float will be removed in the winter because it's a very rough area, and the construction will be done from a working barge and from land for the stairway, et cetera. We don't see any detriment to it, and I believe we don't need to request a waiver because the bylaw says you need to construct the pier as close to the center of the lot as possible, and since this is where the old one was, and it meets the requirement, and it meets the requirement for distance from other docks, we feel that it is as close as possible. And I can answer any questions at this point.
Questions from the board?
What's our required setback from property line?
25, that's
Okay, it's
the,
37.
it's a 91
Okay.
requirement as well.
How about
It's
to the-
42 feet is what I have it scaled.
Yeah, I got close to
How
that,
about
too.
to each other dock? What's our requirement?
75
Is it
feet.
75?
to
75, he has
140
plenty
and
on there.
75.
If you look on Google, there's that whole area is a big sandbar, and it drops off drastically at the edges, so it's kind of where it worked out really well. There's right where ours is, the float is a soft bottom, like you can sink in 1.5 feet just by standing right there. So it's off the sandbar where it drops.
And we do the length of the dock from mean high or mean low?
Mean high.
So the length of this dock is longer than 80.
No, it's not.
I don't think so.
It's 80 feet.
80 feet from mean low water you have marked. Oh, okay. Sorry, didn't see that arrow. Didn't see that arrow. So that's a 1 to 40, 1 to 10. That's what screwed me up, okay.
What material are the pilings?
We're going to use either composite or Greenheart.
Using
This
the
was-
right scale does help.
Do you condition the upper part of the pier to be non-CCA also above the water, or not?
Like the
The
material for the
structure.
decking?
The structure. Besides, is just the piles have to be non-CCA? I'm just asking for my question. Most of the contractors don't use CCA anymore just because of the overall rules.
Yeah,
no
there should be
CCA
no
unless it's-
CCA.
So,
Did we add if it's more than 3-inch
Yeah, I
dimension?
think now we allow our support pilings to be that if there are no better
Just so you know, I'm doing the
options
largest
available.
wetland restoration project in North America, and the entire thing is CCA for 10,000 pilings we're putting in for,
That,
it's down in Louisiana, so it's,
what they're doing down there.
Yeah, I wouldn't tout
I
that.
was just reading the plans today, and I thought it was kind of ironic that it's, funny.
Yeah, but we do allow them now.
So- can we, with this one, we can put float stops at the back end of the float, because it doesn't,
Yeah, their comment, I could not see, couldn't see your depth, but they do meet the depth requirement. The
On the back end-
DMF
well, on the
comment.
front end it
I
does.
couldn't,
Can we
maybe next
put-
time you do a plan, you could put the distance not within the pile, because I did not see that.
Okay. I
But
can-
so that's 2.6 to the bottom of the float, and then as he says, there's the
Well, I mean, every float you've ever permitted only
has-
goes to the
has-
bottom of the float,
yeah.
so it's not really, that wasn't,
That was at the
because of
bottom of the-
it's only this much. I took a picture of one at Bass River Marina yesterday just to check, and it's like 4 inches on a regular float, that the flotation, and we can build it.
Underneath it.
We can even build the flotation in it, but the problem with that is it raises,
It does raise the floor.
raise it up, and that's not, you can't get up on it out of the water then.
Who swims in Bass River? Why would they need to get up out of the water?
This is the where everybody goes water skiing and everything.
know.
So, you could do dock starts right here.
I hope not.
Anybody else? Brittany,
No, nothing else.
audience, Zoom, anybody on Zoom? Somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions?
I will.
I'll second,
Is that Paul or Jack?
Jack.
and I second.
B. Sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next order of business, or certificate of compliance, we have two COC requests, one for SE 83-1345 Vivian Cronin, 32 Tasmania Drive, and one for SE 83-2245 Constance Wright, 23 Circuit Road. Both are easy certificates. Do I have a motion to issue the COC for SE 83-1345 and SE 83-2245?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Approve the CO, circled the COC approval.
Next order of business and approval of meeting minutes for May 2nd, 2024.
I read them and I found them excellent.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Oh, I don't have to do that.
We have a request. Is this coming
So this is from the
the C?
Sorry.
It's not CPC, is it?
The Community Development Department is leading the Chasebrook Park Restoration and Pedestrian Bridge. It has been permitted. We had some environmental justice meetings. This is on Route 28 connecting the old Yankee Village parcel, the Chasebrook Park, and Mill Creek Park together in a cohesive ecological park. We're in grant application phase right now and further permitting. And with a lot of the grant applications, they ask for match money. And so they asked me to request $25,000 from the Conservation Fund to go toward this project. It involves invasive species removal and restoration of native species, in addition to educational signage with interpretive signs and a pedestrian bridge connecting the parks and some bank erosion control with fiber rolls. So they've made this request for the Conservation Fund. They have some other funding sources as well. It's an interesting parcel because the funding sources that they have can only be used on each specific parcel. So it's very interesting. So they've asked for some money from the Conservation Fund.
How much money do we have in the Conservation
You beat
Fund?
me to that question.
Me too.
Let me pull up the exact amount.
Sitting closer than you are.
Do we have 25,000 in there?
Yes, we do.
That's all that
Shorter
matters.
distance.
It was. Not very.
I think we have, sorry, hard to find this one. We have $56,000 in there.
I'm sorry, how much?
We have $56,000 in there currently.
How do we get more money in there?
We don't have an income into the Conservation Fund at the moment. It used to be allocated by the Board of Selectmen at the end of each year. They have not given us money in several years. So we figure if we spend all of the money we have, maybe we have a better chance of getting more money to the Conservation Fund. We can also ask for donations.
That's an awful government way of thinking.
Yeah, this is, I think this goes back to a question I asked Karen Green The last time that money from the town was contributed to the conservation fund, and it
A long
would be
time
right,
ago.
like 1987,
Yeah, like a long, long time ago.
yeah,
You said a few
And-
years.
I thought it was,
yeah.
Well, that
and
was a few years to us.
So,
It's only 10 years.
I mean, I guess I don't have any problem voting in favor of it, but the thing is, you said there was other matching funds coming out of somebody else's money in town?
yeah, so it says we're using some money from the Land Bank Maintenance Fund and some CPA money that may only be used at the Yankee Village parcel. And there's the various amount of money for both of those. It only has the total in those funds. I'm not sure how much they're contributing.
What's the total amount that they need?
For the Chasebrook Park project, it's, the budget right now is 1.2 million.
Okay.
So the grant applications we're applying for are for $500,000 plus.
Okay.
What's the matching requirement total?
It differs for each grant that the one that I think some of them, I don't know the answer. I will have to ask Nate Wetton. He is leading all of the permitting and grant applications on this project. Let me see.
I hear an echo.
Well, regardless, though, I mean, obviously, this is what they're asking, so obviously, they must be hitting the minimums that they need in order for the matching.
Yeah, so with those other two funds, with our contribution, we would be meeting the match requirement for the SWIG application, which would be one of the ones for up to $1 million.
So, have we recently, meaning the Conservation Commission, used any of these funds for any other purpose lately?
Yes, you recently gave us $10,000 for the Phragmites management project that just
Okay.
started.
And that's part of the CPC contributed money to that and all
So yeah,
that.
so I got money from CPC, CDBG, and the Conservation Fund for
Yeah.
that project.
But there's
And
not a long history of using that money, right? I mean, it's sporadic.
It is sporadic. We use it for 1 year. We used it for conference attendance. We've used it for small projects like this. It was used for the Phragmites project beforehand, but I think it's good to use it for projects that we're doing that are especially like restoring native species and doing invasive species management, because otherwise it's great for match funding because they usually require a small amount and then you can get the rest of the budget for a project.
But no money is being added to that.
And not that I know of, no. So it's up.
When the money's gone, it's gone.
When it's gone, we'll have to figure out how to get more.
When do we start figuring out how to get more now?
You sit on the street corner with a cup.
What? Yeah.
Well,
Paul, are you going to do a bake sale, maybe? You're going to bake the cookies?
Yeah, I'm a pretty good baker, too. Could probably make like $40, you know?
I think we would have to sit,
40 more than we have already, though, right?
Well, that beats standing on the corner with a cup.
we would have to make a case to the select board and to the finance committee as to why we need money in that fund. And I
Well-
think it's we have to do, if they have all of these goals for us, coming from the open space plan, we need money to do those things. So I think,
Phragmites.
yeah.
And we can also, I mean, if people want to make gifts to the Conservation Commission, this would
They
be the
may.
fund that we would want them to
but Brittany, will
do.
be addressing this in the planning activity you expect to have?
I'm sorry, what is your question? Will we be addressing what?
How we spend this money could get, and if there are, or even, like you just said, these are the kind of things you would like to do.
Yeah, I would want to do projects, but we can't do projects if we have no money. So I think the first goal would be to make a case to the finance committee as to why they need to continue inputting money into this fund.
But my
You want
point,
to brainstorm about what projects
exactly,
we should,
and how you go about this and why and so forth.
You
During
have,
the planning session.
yeah.
I agree with that.
sorry, do you have any idea of where if it is true, if I have the date right, back in 1987, that was the last time money was put into this fund, you know where that money came from?
I don't. I can get info for you. I just am not very good at using Munis. So I will work with Don Marie and get a whole background for everyone.
Yeah, yeah. I just wonder if it was like a yearly contribution from the town into the
I think
conservation.
it was.
It was.
Yeah, I think it used to be an annual
Don't
contribution.
quote me, but I thought they used to give like an annual, like the selectmen, as part of their budget, would give an annual, sum. I don't know what that was, but they gave us an annual sum at some point, and, because it used to be a lot of money in there.
It used to be a lot of
Used to be
money.
a lot of money
Now
in
it's
there.
dwindling.
Probably why they stopped, because it wasn't being spent.
Well,
Maybe. Could have been.
But we are limited as to what we can spend it on too, so that's.
Okay.
others got money like the plant on Buck Island and so forth, that they were grabbing money everywhere, so maybe some of it.
That's grants, though, yeah. So for those grant funding, you need match money.
Didn't the selectmen just approve their budget, more money in their budget too? So
Yeah.
maybe they can send us some money that way.
Well, there's a lot of money that was, the Chamber of Commerce money went way up from like, I think it doubled or more than doubled.
So did the
100 to
selectmen's,
200,000. So I mean, there are other people who are getting more money,
Yeah,
groups.
we have to make a
And I think
case.
we just have to make a good case for why we need the money. And I think what Jack said is true. We just have to come up with projects and the cost of those projects and
I think
say,
we can sit down and as a group, come up with a list of projects that we would like to try and do.
I would also think that if we coordinated with some of the other conservation, land conservation groups in town, what they're doing and how and why we want to do our share, and come forth with a more of a full-blown type of
Well, we did just,
coordination and collaboration approach.
You might want to look back in the records. I think Kelly came up with, and I don't know if you were on the board at that point. I think Kelly came up with a itemized thing of stuff she wanted to do in the town.
We've done this several times.
yeah, I think it's
know-
kind of like a
Yeah, I know,
frequent goals and objectives.
Goals, and I know Chase Brook was one of them, but there were a couple of other little ones that I'm trying to pull out of my head, but.
So you don't think?
well, we had a
the
lot of things
open
like,
plan-
things for trail improvement, interpretive trail signs, doing
Outreach.
certain
small type, ecological studies, that sort of thing, so.
Well, doesn't
I
the new
do-
plan have that, some of that?
the new what?
RP?
The recreation,
Oh, yeah, they do, and I do know that Natural Resources came to us for costs of materials for redoing a couple of bridges at
Yeah,
the John Cirilla, I can never pronounce that park there.
And we did,
Close by where they're gonna put all that effluent.
Yeah.
there was something for the blueberry patch. I think we gave money for the blueberry patch maybe six or 7 years ago.
Yeah, I think so.
At the town meeting, somebody mentioned, being more aggressive with Phragmites, and I think we might want to take advantage of that.
Oh, that was, because that was one of the things that we had originally talked about, again, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, was Phragmites working in tandem with Historic, and there's somebody else too, I forget, but it was something to improve, or to basically restore an historic view over on Thatcher Shore Road, right where the rock is. Going out. Because we have
I
that,
remember that.
you remember that?
I remember that.
And I don't think, I think the last I can remember, the Historic Society wanted to enjoy the view, but they didn't particularly want to pay for any of it, so I think that's where it,
And the neighborhood just wanted to,
Interesting.
and the neighborhood just wanted to mow it all down, so.
move the,
Anyhow.
It's up to you.
anything else? Oh, you got,
We have to move to vote.
So we can do that, so do you agree to commit that money, and do you direct me to issue a letter to that effect?
So moved.
second.
All those in favor?
aye.
Opposed?
Nobody's opposed.
Yes.
I'm
No,
signing it.
not opposed.
Oh, he's
Well,
giggling,
I'm
he's
about to sign
giggling
it.
at me, he's giggling at
I'm
me.
about to sign it, okay.
Okay,
And you got my email about the next 3 years?
I did.
Next 3 years,
I come up the stream,
we're going to stay on our ag.
that's what I emailed her.
Tobacco ag problem.
Yeah.
Made me nervous for a
Oh,
second.
sorry, I did that in
It's fine. I'm good with that.
Negative vote.
two at a time there.
Don't ever do that again.
Is there any other business not reasonably anticipated?
Would you mind throwing these out for me?
Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned at 6:56 PM.